Grab your beverages and turn up your interweb. Solving the world's problems 12 ounces at a time. It's Dudes and Beer.
Well, hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to episode 225. 225 episodes, everybody. Do you realize how many hours that is? Like, we have shows that were 5 hours long at some points. There are literally hours and hours and hours and hours, hundreds of hours of content from this show. It is so great to have everybody here. I am Chris Jordan, your host. Tonight we have a great show talking about actually horrible things, but very, very enlightening. Tonight we'll be talking with Chong Kim, a survivor activist, host of the Velvet Brick podcast. We'll be talking about human trafficking, the recent arrest of Jerreferey Epstein. We also have Billy Joe Cain from the Radical Empathy Education Foundation, our good friend and regular guest here as co-host this evening. Please do remember, everybody, that the Dudes and Beer podcast is now brought to you by Audible. If you're a fan of books, learning, reading, adventure within your own brain between your two ears, Audible is the place for you. Feel free to stop on by audibletrial.com/dudes to get your 30-day free trial of Audible today. Once again, that is audibletrial.com/dudes. Tonight, once again, Billy, welcome to the program.
Thanks.
As always, with us on the phone is Chong Kim, host of the Velvet Brick podcast and survivor of human trafficking, as well as activist and the person who started the hashtag Every 40 Seconds campaign. We're going to get into all of that this evening. Welcome to the show, Chong. How are you doing this evening, ma'am?
I am doing great.
Fantastic. Well, if you don't mind, I know typically whenever we have Billy on the show, we normally, preempt the show with a small definition of what human trafficking is. So many people get confused when it comes to human trafficking. They think that human trafficking is just smuggling, coyotes bringing people across the border, stuff like that. It gets caught up in those news headlines so much.
Yeah.
Human trafficking is so much different, so much more nefarious, and like we say all the time on the show and our posts, in our own backyard. This is not something coming over international borders, folks. This is something that is literally happening within your communities. So I'm actually going to pot down my microphone and Billy's microphone. I would like for you to, if you could, share your story with our audience, Chong. I really think that there's really no other way to explain why you do what you do, what it is that you do, than to hear your story. And I think it's especially pertinent to what we're going to be talking about this evening, Jerreferey Epstein, the way that human trafficking goes all the way into the halls of big business, the halls of politics, everything. So please do share your story with us, Chong.
Okay. Well, let me begin with this. I was actually born in South Korea, and I was born disabled. And so the doctors in Korea back in the 70s, they weren't embracing disabled infants. My uncle actually served in the United States military, and he's actually Caucasian. He was married into our family. He lived in Dallas, Texas. And so when the doctors told my parents, you go have another baby, we'll take care of her. And my dad was like, wait a minute. What do you mean you're going to take care of her? You're going to treat her? And they said, no, we're going to throw her away. And my dad was like, no, you can't do that. And they said, well, you need to pay cash up front for treatment. And so my dad called my uncle, and my uncle, he's, I don't know if anybody remembers the old soap opera Dallas, with J.R. Ewing and everything. my uncle was, he loved the cowboy hats, the pretend Bronco horns. And so when my uncle heard that, they were going to kill me, he said, well, you better tell them Koreans to step away from my little niece or they're going to have a Texas beat up their ass. That's how my uncle was. And he was such a joker. And so my uncle actually came to the United States, and they were able to find a way to protect me from the doctors from killing me. And once I was able to be stable enough, then we came into the United States, and I was a toddler. And in 1984, my parents were naturalized, and because I was a minor, I got to be naturalized with my parents. And I remember shaking Ronald Reagan's hand, President Ronald Reagan's hand. But I was a little girl, so I didn't know who he was. But I liked Nancy better because she gave me 2 lollipops. And I remember he shook my hand and he said, welcome to America. You're now an American citizen. And the reason why I wanted to share this with you, because I want to share that in the time of my trafficking, I was treated like an undocumented person, even though I was already naturalized, already American. So anyway, so I grew up in Oklahoma. So I always tell people I'm like the Asian redneck. I mean, I grew up in the trailer park. My dad was like the Asian version. Yes. My dad was like the Asian version of Jeff Foxworthy. He would have like 3 to 8 cars out in our acres of land, and none of them worked. They were sitting on the cylinder block. I mean, you just got used to it.
Love it.
And but the downside about the living in Oklahoma, I was also bullied. I also went through sexual abuse as well as physical abuse, and it was by people that I knew, my family, and even teachers and principals. And so, but the one thing, when I was a young teenager, I remember watching Disney movie, and that was my escape. And I also remember Steve Urkel. Everyone used to make fun of him. Yeah. And so by the time I got to junior high, I decided to make everyone laugh with me instead of at me, because I would have students that would come up to me and they'd say, hey, ching chong, ching chong. Oh. They said, oh, did your parents drop silverwares, and is that why they called you ching chong? And this, yes.
Yeah, the horrible things that children do.
Kids are
and adults.
Yes.
And adults.
Adults.
Exactly.
Yes, true. That doesn't
they only learn it from one place.
Exactly. But what I did was I ended up outsmarting them. So I would pretend to be stupid. And so I would go down the hall and go ching chong, and everyone else would look at me like, wait a minute, she's making fun of herself.
That's educational camouflage.
Exactly. And I remember kids would come up to me and say, "Aso, grasshopper." And I said, "No, you're not doing it right. You gotta go, aso, grasshopper." And so the other kids would laugh. And so, but I was still going through abuse even while I was going to school. Yeah. And even though I was a class clown, I never really talked about my abuse because I was ashamed of it. I didn't know I was a victim. Then I went into foster care. I ran away from home because of the abuse at home.
Do you mind if I ask you a question?
Sure. Feel free to ask me anything.
Cool. When my wife was a kid, she wasn't being treated very well at home, to put it lightly, and we never saw signs or PSAs that talked about, if you're being hurt at home, do this. This is what child abuse is. I don't recall any of that from when I was a kid. Did you recall or ever see any signs like that? I think that's an important part of trying to put everything in context, because the culture at that time and the zeitgeist, or whatever you want to call it, if there was no information like that, we didn't know it. We didn't have the internet necessarily, at all, really. No access to information. So I think that when, if someone is listening and thinking about, oh, well, why didn't you know? You could just look at a sign. It was everywhere. It's like, no, it wasn't. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly, because especially in the mid-'80s, and especially when you grew up in Oklahoma,
right?
They still had the old school that goes on at home, stays in the home. And the other side of it was there was a lot of stereotypes that Asian people had it all.
Yeah.
And so, because I remember when I ran away from home, I remember a caseworker, her name was Sharon, and I showed her whip marks on my legs. I showed her the black and blue bruises on my body. And she looked at me and she said, Chong, you need to go home and apologize to Mama. And I looked at her and I said, Sharon.
That'll help.
And I mocked
people.
her. Exactly. And so I mocked her. So I looked at her name tag. I said, is your name Sharon? So Sharon, if you send me back home, I will hang myself and carve your name on my chest. That way, when the police find me, they'll be sure to look for you too.
Oh my God.
And that's how I got into foster care. But I didn't know that being in foster care was nothing better. I got put into multiple foster families. I had, even caseworkers said to me, oh, you're a teenager. Nobody wants a teenager. Everyone wants these cute, cuddly little babies.
Yeah.
And so by the time and I remember being 13, and I remember a caseworker looked at me and she said, I know what's going to happen in your life. And I sat there and I said, okay. And she said, now that you're part of the foster care, you're going to be one of those kids that's going to be pregnant at 14, be on drugs at 16. You'll either be dead or incarcerated by the time you're 18. And when she said that, I was angry. I was so angry that I wanted to prove her wrong. Whereas nowadays, I hear kids that says, well, someone says I'm going to be dismissed. Well, then get angry and prove them wrong.
Yeah.
But they could be right. No, they're not right. If anybody tells you anything negative, that means they don't want you to succeed. They are threatened by your potential.
Yeah,
exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so by the time I was 18, and, when I said that I came here from the United States, I actually didn't speak Korean. I mean, I actually didn't speak English. I spoke Korean. Mm-hmm. And I had a principal in Oklahoma that told my parents to stop speaking Korean to her. So I ended up having to stay with my uncle for a while so I could learn the English language. So I was held back twice. So by the time I was 18, I should have been already graduated.
Right.
But I was actually in my junior to senior year around that time. And so a lot of kids even bullied me because I was 2 years older. And so, but by the time I was 18, I actually took a vocational class in Oklahoma for law enforcement. I knew what I went through was not normal. I just knew it. I said, I want to be a cop so I can take away these pedophiles, because I was raped from 3 to 6 by the same perpetrator. From that point on, I was sexually abused at the age of 4 all the way through the age of 9. And by the time I was 9, I started having boobs, so none of these pedophiles wanted me. And here's the sick part. When I was 9 and pedophiles didn't want me, I actually felt empty.
Yeah.
Because they would buy me gifts.
Yep.
They actually would buy me gifts.
All that stuff it's natural, unfortunately. That's the way our brains work. And they obviously just took advantage of that, pattern that's in our heads. I mean, no one deserved that. No one.
Exactly. But, because most of my child molesters, they were principals, they were coaches, they were teachers, they were clergymen. So these were still men of authority and power.
Yeah,
especially to a child, So if I wanted to win points for church, I had to be nice to the pastor. If I wanted to win points at school, I had to be nice to the principal, regardless what he was doing to me. And even though I hated it, but I still liked the little, treatments that he gave me, like candy, and let me ditch school, or let me write on a wall. Yes. And so, but anyway, back to when I was 18, I wanted to go into law enforcement. And I studied law enforcement at Mid-America Votech in Wayne, Oklahoma. And then I told my law enforcement officer I was learning how to do investigation, to dispatch, and even, self-defense tactics. And so I remember I spoke to my law enforcement teacher and I said, I want to do something more. I don't want to be a security at a mall. And he said, you need to move out to Dallas, Texas, so you can join the police academy out there. You can get your basics in college and whatnot, and then join the police academy. Well, that was my plan. However, in 1994, before I was trafficked, from the time I was a little girl from 3 all the way up to 18. Even when I was a teenager, I never dated. And plus the boys didn't like me or anything like that. And I was also scared of dating because I was afraid, because of what I went through with sexual abuse. I thought that was lovemaking. So I thought so if a boy liked me, I ended up slapping him. If he held my hand, I punched him in the nose. And they're like, "What are you doing?" "Well, I like you too," because I thought that's what love was.
Yeah.
You know.
Oh my God.
And so when I was 18, I remember one of my friends. She said, "We have to go to Lawton, Oklahoma." It was 2 hours away from my home, and she was a minor. And so I said, "Okay," but we were in the same VOTEC class. She was 17, I was 18. And so I drove us out there, and we went to this nightclub, and I've never been to a nightclub, so I got nauseous. I said, "You know what? I'll just go back to the hotel," because we had registered in this hotel, I remember, Days Inn on Sheridan Boulevard. And I told her, "Keep my car." And she said, "Well, how are you going to get back to the hotel?" And I said, "I'm just going to catch a cab, and then I'll just meet you back at the hotel." And she said, "Okay." I begged her, "Please do not go home with any guy." I was looking out for her, not realizing that night changed my life. So I called a cab. I remember it was yellow cab. And the cab driver took me out in the middle of the wheat field and beat and raped me. I had bruises from my neck all the way down to my chest. And I had blacked out because everything I went through as a child all came back.
Yeah.
And it was just this flooded back to back flashback of every sexual abuse I went through. And I remember waking up in the wheat field. My clothes were torn. I couldn't find my bra. And so I was in jeans, and I had this white blouse or something. And I ended up having to hitchhike. Not hitchhike. I ended up having to walk about 2 hours just to get to the city. And so when I came back to the hotel, I remember my friend opened the door and she goes, "Wow, you're a hypocrite." But when she saw the bruises, she looked at me and she goes, "Are you okay?" And I said, "I just want to go home. I just want to go home." During that time, I was so in love with this guy that said he loved me, that went to my school, but we never did anything intimate. And so he was like my best friend. I could tell him anything. And all I wanted to do was call him up and wanted him to comfort me. And instead, when I told him, I said I was raped, and he said, "So you're not a virgin anymore." I said, "I was raped." He said, "So you're a slut now." That hurt me more than the rape itself.
Yeah.
And because I had bruises on my body, my one of my family members, I won't say who, when she saw me, she backhanded me and called me a whore. So from that point on, I fell into a deep depression, and I was thinking everything about my dad was a pillar of the community. All these men that took advantage of me. So in my mind, I'm like, you know what? I'm sick and tired of being this good girl. So I ended up working as a strip dancer. I just didn't care anymore. Mm-hmm. I went to a downward spiral. And when I was a dancer out in Lawton, and also some in Oklahoma City and some in Dallas. And I remember it was probably about a couple of months, and I became extremely promiscuous. I didn't care if I had AIDS. I wanted to kill myself because I was so miserable. And I remember a dancer said to me, she was actually older, and she said, "You need to get your life taken care of, and you need to get out of here. This life is not for you." That's what she said. And then I had to refocus and said, "Okay, I wanted to be a cop. Let me get back to that mindset."
That's about the first good advice that you've gotten in this story.
No.
It sounded like she's like, "Get out of here, get your life together." It's like, that seems like the best advice you've gotten. Everything else has just been horrible.
Yes.
You had to get it from a stripper, so to speak. Oh my god.
Exactly. And so, while I was looking for a place in Dallas, Texas, me and a friend of mine, neither one of us had credit or anything. And so her dad would rent the apartment and we would just pay him rent. So he got a 2-bedroom apartment, but we would always come back to Oklahoma because to us Okies, we think of Dallas, Texas like Manhattan.
Yeah.
And so we don't see it as a separate state. You know, we'll just say, hey, who wants to go to Dallas, you know? So we would come back to Oklahoma and go to the country bar. And there was a country bar called City Limits. And that night, that's when I met the recruiter. I didn't know anything about red flags or anything. He looked like one of those soap opera guys. He was very chiseled and he was wearing a Marine uniform that he bought from an Army surplus store that I had no idea that he did that. Because in my mind, my uncle was in the military, so I thought all military guys were good guys.
Wow. And
I remember my girlfriends looked at me and they said, oh my gosh, that guy is checking you out. And I remember turning around. This is like 1994, the big hair, the puppy dog ears in our hair.
I remember.
You know, the big bangs and everything. And I remember looking at him and he was staying at the bar smiling at me. And I thought, no, he's not looking at me. He's looking at my girlfriend. So I turned around and I was by myself. And I looked at my girlfriends. They're already on the dance floor and they're waving at me. They're like, go to him. And I was like, I don't know what to say. And I turned around and he's right behind me. And of course, the country music was so loud and everything. I remember dancing to Boot Scootin' Boogie by Brooks and Dunn, Alabama. I mean, I remember all the music. And we're screaming and yelling at each other because it's a nightclub. And he said, do you want to go outside? And I said, sure. I didn't even think about safety. I wasn't thinking about, all I could think about is, oh my gosh, he's so cute. He's actually talking to me. I'm matter in some way. And so we were just walking around the bar. And I remember he kept saying to me, he was like, you're so beautiful. And I was thinking, wow, is this real? Can this be real? And he would say all the beautiful things that I never heard any guy say to me. And he would say, you know, he would always ask me questions like, where are you from? Tell me about yourself. But he never talked about himself. That was the one red flag I didn't notice.
Yeah.
And so whenever I would ask him, like, so, you know, I'm talking a lot about myself. So tell me about you. And he would just smile and goes, I want to hear more about you. But in my mind, I'm like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah,
who doesn't like talking about themselves?
I know. And, you know, with somebody that's so attractive and they're paying attention to you, heck yeah, man. That sounds like, you know.
Exactly.
Yeah, it sounds like a bullseye.
And
Everything's
It's what
so-
it's supposed to be, right?
yeah.
Exactly. And so, you know, when we started dating, I remember within the first 2 weeks, he was already saying, I love you. I want you to be with me. I want you to be my wife. I was so excited rather than cautious because I was never taught what is a healthy relationship. And so, and he was older than me. He was, I think, about 26, 27. I was 19. And so I told him, I said, I want to be a singer. And he was like, oh, do you like to sing? And I said, yes. And we would sing together and everything. And none of my girlfriends ever said anything. They kept saying, oh my gosh, he's so cute.
Yeah.
You're so lucky. That was all. And so, and a couple of the red flags I started noticing, he kept coming over to my place. I was never allowed to go to his place. When I asked him, you know, where are you at? He said, oh, I live at the barracks. Well, I didn't realize that there was no MIT in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I didn't know that at the time. And so I just believed that all barracks and all military branches were all the same. And so I was like, okay, you know, that made sense to me. And he would always stay at my place and everything. And one day he said, you know, I want to take you to Florida to go meet with my parents. And I remember my girlfriends and I, we were screaming. We were so excited because that meant he was serious.
Yeah.
Because I was always told that because I was always told that, you know, if a guy invites you to his parents, at least he's going to propose,
Yeah,
you know.
that's when it's real.
Yes. And I kid you not, he probably would have been the one guy I would have given up my dream as a cop, as an activist, because I was already imagining having kids with him, being a stay-at-home mom, catering to him, loving on him. That was my dream. Because in my mind, I thought, as long as someone loves me enough, then I will show my love back to them.
I
And
think
the
that's
only-
so reasonable to think, in that age,
Yes.
at your age at the time, and that era.
Yes.
It makes perfect sense. I mean, my
Exactly.
goodness.
Exactly. And we never went to Florida. We went from 35W heading north.
Oh,
And I'll be honest with you, my geography sucks. I'm so thankful
hear
for
you.
Google Maps.
just
Oh my God! Yeah, that's
just so you know,
Paper maps
Florida,
if nobody knows.
Florida is only north of Cuba.
yeah.
Yeah,
It's the only thing south of Florida directly.
exactly.
Yeah.
And so we ended up in Enid, Oklahoma.
Oh,
And we stopped at this
I'm so
abandoned
sorry.
house. And I remember looking out the window and I was like, wow, Florida is ugly.
yeah, right.
Because it was gray and drizzly that day. I remember there was no palm trees. I was expecting the beach.
Oh my gosh! Of course you
And
were.
so
Yeah,
when
there's
I-
none of that in Enid,
you know,
Oklahoma.
Exactly. And then what was funny was I remember seeing the abandoned house and I'm thinking to myself, like, oh, is his parents poor? That's what I was thinking.
Yeah,
I mean, all
And I
that
was
makes
sitting
sense.
there, and I was like, I don't want to sound snooty or anything.
yeah.
And so I was like, so your parents, are they okay? And he said, no, this isn't my parents' house. And I was like, oh, thank God.
Mm.
Yeah.
And he said, I have a friend that's homeless. And so this is how naive I was. I was like, oh my gosh, he cares
know.
about homeless people.
Yeah.
Again, why would you think
Yes.
anything different?
Exactly. So I said, well, I'll sit here. I'll wait till you visit your friend and we can go to your parents. The one thing I will never forget, that road trip, there were some red flags, but I ignored them. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
makes-
I mean, I
can't be a bad guy.
I mean, all trafficking aside, I don't know of any friend that has never not ignored the red flags.
Yes.
Everybody does.
Most of us don't know to ignore red flags until we're like in our mid-30s.
Well, I mean, if you've
Yeah.
been with someone and they've talked to you and they've told you
Yeah.
that they love you, you probably give
Yeah.
give them some some slack on a couple of things here
Leeway.
and there. I mean, relationships
Exactly.
are compromised,
So-
but my gosh,
At what point in this quote relationship, Chong, did things start going leftwise, so to speak? When did they? I mean, of course, you had your inklings with the homeless friend, with the parents in Florida, things like that. But at what point did things really raise their head and pop up?
Oh, I'm actually getting to that.
oh man,
Because during the car ride, I remember, because in all the other times we went out, he would always kiss my hand. We would always say, I love you too. We were so mushy. But on this road trip, he was so focused, and it was like he looked angry while driving. And I would touch his hand, he would jump, and he would look at me, and I was like, I love you. And he would just give me half a smile. And I started panicking. I was like, oh no, what if I make him mad? What if he doesn't love me anymore? What if I'm ugly? All these horrible things I was hearing as a child, And I would, try to soothe him. I would hold his hand and I said, do you love me? And he would look at me and he would say, yeah, I love you.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, all the other times he'd always be mushy, So when we got to the house, I said, well, I'll stay here and you go visit your friend and we can be on the way. He didn't say not one word. He got out of the car. I was sitting in the passenger side. He walked over to my side, opened the door, and he choked me.
Wow.
And I couldn't breathe. And I remember looking at him and he said, you're going to do what I say. You're not going to talk back. You're not going to scream. And in my mind, I wasn't thinking about running away. In my mind, I remember looking at his eyes and I was hurt. I was hurt and I said, what did I do wrong?
Yeah.
What did I do to make him so angry at me? I don't want that look anymore. I
Perfectly
want him to
reasonable
love me
response.
again,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, I'll go in with you. So he grabbed my wrist, yanked me out of the car. And I remember walking into the abandoned house. There was this couch, this puke, ugly green couch. That's why I'm not a fan of lime green anymore.
Yeah.
And
Who is, though? Sorry.
Exactly. But I remember there was a couch. And when he had slammed the door, he handcuffed my wrist to the doorknob. And I remember just sitting there and I was crying. And he had this briefcase-looking cell phone thing. I'm 44.
Yeah.
So I remember these briefcase.
Oh, yeah.
They had like the cell phone inside.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it had that coil.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember he would pick up the phone and he would call them and he said, yeah, I got her. Uh-huh. Okay. And then he hang up. But I didn't pay attention to the phone call during that moment. In my mind, I'm still replaying him choking me. I'm still replaying every time he said he loved me. I'm still replaying all the flashback of the good times. And I'm like, oh my goodness, is this a different person? Does he have an evil twin? You know, I'm still in that state of shock.
Yeah, just trying to track down how A became Z suddenly.
Yes.
He must be a fantastic actor. God, if he's that monster.
You know, and so, but the one thing I remember, because I was naturalized, he opened up my purse, and I remember I had my naturalization papers, I didn't have any credit cards, but my bank cards, my Social Security, everything.
Yeah.
He burnt every one of them. And here's the funny thing. I was not afraid that my documents were burned because I thought, hey, I could call Ronald Reagan again.
Yeah, right?
Because I thought I was invincible. Exactly. The only thing I got upset is when he burnt my Blockbuster card. As crazy as that may sound. You remember when you had to rent so many VHS and you would earn points to get a free rental?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. That I was like, really?
I think their average late charge was around $8. I think it was.
Yes.
We make $8 on each person.
Exactly. And so I remember when he burnt my Blockbuster card, I was like, oh, come on. I had some free rental saved up.
Yeah.
You know? And so from that point on, I mean, it took it felt like a couple of months. It could be less than that. But during that time, I could see him getting anxious because he kept calling the people and saying, where are you? I brought her. You're supposed to come pick her up. I didn't add 2 and 2 together. I had no idea what was going on.
Yeah.
There were moments where I remember he would beat me. He would rape me throughout the whole time. And when I was running away, one time I ran away, but there was no plumbing in the apartment. There was no kitchen. There was no bathroom. So I had to soil on myself. I had leftover feces on my body. I had, old stale urine in my hair because I had to lay down with my arms still handcuffed. So when I ran away, of course, I stunk. And I ran into the shopping mall. And I said, somebody please help me. My boyfriend's going to kill me. And people were like, oh, my gosh, because they could smell how horrid I was.
Yeah.
And I walked up to the security, and he's like, ma'am, step back. So here he comes into the shopping mall wearing a military camo, and everyone's applauding to him. And he grabs me by the hair and drags me out the door, and I'm screaming like, somebody please help me. He's going to kill me. And when I saw that nobody was helping me, I was shocked. And when he threw me in the car, I remember he said, you're nobody. You're nobody. Nobody gives a shit about you. That's what he said to me. And I believed him. After that, I stopped trying to run away. Well, I ran away one other time. And what I did, I went to a battered women's shelter, and they said, do you speak English? And I was like, I'm speaking English. What other language do you not know? I mean, I was literally getting the runaround. And because I didn't have any form of identification, and with me being Asian looking, people thought I was an undocumented person. Yeah. They said, we need to prove that you're a legal resident. And I was like, what are you talking about? Because I was so Americanized, I didn't understand about immigration. Yeah. So then this woman came to pick me up, and I didn't find out later that she was alongside the guy. She was a madam of a high-end escort, and she was getting paid under the table by traffickers. And so that's how I got trafficked, through her, and because she was the one who was supposed to pick me up earlier. To this day, I still don't know what took so long, but when she picked me up, she was the one who trafficked me out to Nevada on an Indian reservation. And there I was among 30 to 40 girls in each unit on an abandoned distribution warehouse. And I thought I was in a third world country.
Oh my God.
I had no idea it was on the American soil. There is a movie about me called Eden with Beau Bridges and Jamie Chung. Now, in the movie, they will show kittens. When I was working with the scriptwriter, I told him, when I was trafficked, they would align us with a little kid. And I'm talking about 7 years old and under. So if we did not comply, or our male adult customers were complaining that a child was screaming because she didn't want to get raped, guess what? The child that I was assigned to, she would be the one to go through the torture. I was forced to be handcuffed and watch her get tortured, beaten, raped, sodomized, you name it.
Yeah.
It's a visual that never, ever escapes you. And so the little girl that was assigned to me, I called her Mia. I don't know her real name. She can range anywhere from Native American to Hispanic to Indian. And so she was 7 years old. And so after she was raped by 12 adult men, her body couldn't take it. She passed away. I was so angry. And I remember saying, you know, God, if I die, I don't want to be in heaven with you. You disgust me because you're not stopping this type of depravity. I hate you. That's what I said. And I remember leaning up against one of the walls because we were waiting for the warehouse trucks to come in. And I remember one of the warehouse trucks was rolled open, and I saw this blue butterfly, and it landed on my finger, and I heard a whisper that says, everything will be okay. And in that moment, I felt an overwhelming peace. I can't describe it. I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was a spiritual awakening, if it was the universe, or whether it was actually the Holy Spirit. But the one thing I do know is in that moment, that's when it came into my mind that I had to strategize my escape. If that meant I had to rank up as a madam, being a female trafficker, in order to get out, then that's what I had to do. Mm-hmm. So I remember the head trafficker, he would come into the warehouse every now and then. He wasn't there all the time. And in the movie of Eden, they'll show a junkie kid that watched us. That's not true. In an organized trafficking ring like this, they make sure nobody is using. Because if you're addicted,
they don't understand it. I mean, it's
yeah.
Because when you're orchestrating a crime, they want to make sure you are not addicted, because otherwise your focus is going to be distracted and you'll be hindered. And so I didn't know the level of corruption during that time, even though I had men by me, but I didn't know who they were. To me, they were nothing but predators to me. So when I ranked up as a madam, that's when I started seeing the corruption side. So when I told the trafficker, I said, who's manning your phones? And he said, most of my men, don't worry about it. And I said, you're having men man your phones? Do you know how ridiculous that sounds? If I was a cop, I could bust you. And he looked at me and goes, what are you talking about? He had a European accent. And I said, you need a woman to man your phones. And I can teach you how to avoid cops. I was basically bullshitting my way. I was like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah, right?
I was like, Chong, what are you doing? You know, and at that point, I started to learn that I had developed what's called a dissociative identity disorder.
Yeah.
Because the trauma was so huge. And so the Jules part of me, that was my alter ego, came out, was more of the sex kitten, the vixen, the manipulator, because she was angry. She was on a vengeance. that she was going to do whatever it took to keep me alive. If that meant manipulating the traffickers and the corruptors and everybody else, then that's what it came down to. And so when my dissociative alter ego came out, you know, he said, well, in order for me to trust you, you have to be involved in some things. So he had me go to Tijuana with one of the traffickers and abduct a child. And I will admit, I had to do that. If I didn't, they were going to kill me. I mean, they had fully automatic rifles. I remember my uncle was a huge gun fan, so I recognized certain rifles. My uncle would tell me, you can't buy this in the U.S., it's illegal. And so some of the guns that they had, yeah, they were illegal. They weren't like their hunting rifles or anything.
Yeah, do you reckon?
Yes. And so after that, you know, I was snorting cocaine, nine lines probably every other hour. While I was trafficked, I will say this much. They injected me with morphine, cocaine, heroin, meth, and they were all liquid because it was all through my veins.
Yeah.
And I got addicted to it. So by the time I became a madam, after that, my focus to escape started to diminish. And then on top of that, when I became a madam, I'll show you this much. When I was a madam, Kevin Spacey and another celebrity, I won't say who, they both called my escort service and was asking for boys. Whatever idolization I had about both the celebrities, it was gone.
Yeah.
I had NFL celebrities that would call us. I would have, I mean, they wanted boys as well. I had politicians to CEOs, corporate leaders, even CEOs that were part of a children's foundation. They would call in and ask for younger girls. And so at that point, I gave up. I was like, well, what's the use of trying to escape? Everybody's in it.
Yeah.
That's what I thought in my mind.
Yeah, yeah.
You know?
And I mean, who am I going to go to for help? The people that I would go to for help are in it.
You've already been to the mall.
Yep.
The general public doesn't want to do
And
anything.
exactly. And during that time, our mayor was Oscar Goodman. Oscar Goodman was a private defense attorney for all the mob. And he is not ashamed of that.
Yeah.
You know?
No,
he
he was pretty proud of
prostitution.
it. He was pretty proud about his skills in working with them too. Absolutely. You know, and even the high-end, you know, politicians and both sides, you know, whenever I hear my friends that says, you know, some of my Democratic friends will say, oh, those Republican men. I'm like, excuse me?
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Your men are not innocent either.
Yeah.
Both sides are ridiculously notorious when it comes to children and sex slavery.
Well,
and so...
Go ahead.
I was going to ask
and
a question.
I mean...
go ahead. I've always, you know, I'm only an expert in a certain part of this field or phenomenon or epidemic, but the question I would have is, did you see a higher percentage of people that were high end, so to speak, or was it pretty much across the board?
It was pretty much across the board. You mean as far as like what their wealthy status is?
Yeah,
clientele.
The idea being the clientele, the richer they were, you know, the more likely they would be in there rather than someone that was just a regular person, so to speak. I think you answered the question.
The ones that were calling the high-end escort, they were all wealthy because the on-call service was $10,000 up front. So that didn't include sex. So whoever can pay $10,000 just to see one of our girls,
yeah, just to,
then,
I think that pretty much
just to
answers
literally,
the question right there.
Yeah, I mean, and that's just to go out to dinner and enjoy yourself for an evening. That's not to have the physical company of somebody.
Yes. And I remember some of my, you know, when I talked about this recently, I remember one of my guy friends, he was like, there's no way somebody would spend $10,000 on sex that's not guaranteed. And I said, you'd be surprised.
Yeah. Well,
you'd be surprised.
Well, and that's just it. When you're talking about, and I was watching a show earlier today, and they broke down the concept of $1 billion. And they were like,
yes.
Imagine
1,000 million.
Imagine being able to spend $10,000 a day for the next 300 years.
Yep. Absolutely.
On whatever
And
you
my
want. You want
traffickers-
$1,000 hamburger? There it is.
Exactly.
And you're still
Exactly.
making money. Like you wouldn't run out of money.
Shipping the Rolling
So,
Stones
Yep.
to
so
pay
when
him.
you're talking about your Jeffrey Epsteins, when you're
Yes.
talking about these kind of people who and like they live in a different community in and of itself. Like, good God, Zuckerberg just bought his 4 neighbors' houses because he didn't want neighbors.
Yep.
He didn't want people
Yep.
looking in on his property, so he bought. The
Yep.
only ways they aren't going to look on his property is to buy the next 4 neighbors. That's
Absolutely.
and it's a weird mentality, and it's wild, and
Yep.
that's go into that a little bit for us because
Sure.
I think that's what's going more than anything in people's minds right now. We all hear about the pedophilia scandals. Whether it's clergy, whether it's what Epstein was originally brought up on charges for, which was just pedophilia and child pornography, if I'm not mistaken, something like that. They considered them light charges.
Yeah,
Let's put it
And
that
that's
way.
ridiculous.
Many
Yeah.
of my friends have they just don't want to hear this stuff. They're
Yeah.
like, it doesn't happen. I'm
No.
like going, you have no idea.
Yeah, no, and that's just it,
Exactly.
man. Whenever I show the articles to Amy that we talk about, Billy, she's like, "Good God!" I'm like, "Yeah, man, this is like on the regs in your backyard,
and what
people."
you hear is just this tiny tippity tip of the iceberg.
Well, and that's just it. Like I said, we all hear about the pedophilia cases. We all hear about the child porn cases whenever they're busted. But just here in the last year, 2 years, have we really started hearing about the human trafficking cases?
Yeah.
Where,
Yep.
like the one in Georgia about 6 months ago, where they rescued like 300 kids or something like that. And
Yep.
people just don't realize the scourge on society that it is, not just here but abroad. And it's one of the most prevalent crimes here in the United States. It flies
Yep.
under every radar because of how deep it goes.
I mean, if you
because of these tendrils. So go into a little bit for us how
Absolutely.
the shadowy world works. Like you were saying, when an NFL star would call up and say, "Yeah, I've got $30,000. I need a 12-year-old boy for the evening." Explain
Yep.
how things get to that point, Chong.
Well, when I was manning the phones, I told the trafficker I want to only man the phones for the escort service, the one that had the girls that were 18 and over. And when we would get calls, now if the NFL or any of the celebrities, what they would do is they would give us a code. So what we would do is we would market that we had a warehouse. We would sell sizes. And so we would basically have a cheat sheet. So if the NFL were to call,
Sure.
they would say, "Yeah, I'm wanting a 5x6, and I want one that has double doors." 5x6 means they're minor. Double doors means they're boys. If it had one door, it means girls. And so, I mean, it would be that sort of thing. Or if we
Yeah.
said, "Hey, we're looking for realtors," meaning we're looking for more traffickers. We're flipping houses means we're trafficking kids. If we got, USD meat coming in and they're fresh, that means the younger they are. And so these were things we had to say because we had to make sure our phones were not tapped. And so, because you never knew when a cop was going to call or was to listen in. The other thing was, I remember my trafficker, he had a spiral notebook paper. He had a list, and I kid you not, he had a list of all of the judicial committee, to DAs, to private attorneys, to music industry, film industry, even Social Security, even IRS, even CPAs. Everybody was on the list that he knew were involved in child porn, child sex slavery. And here's the funny thing. When they would allow these pedophiles to meet, the trafficker would actually keep tabs so they can use it to extort them. So when you hear a news article about a pedophile getting away with it, I would start investigating on that judge and all the court committee that's on there.
It sounds crazy, but I mean, that is exactly
you see what I'm saying?
What needs to happen.
Yeah.
I mean, I want a clean house. I know you do too.
Exactly.
Well, and that's exactly what I posted whenever the indictment came down for Jeffrey Epstein. Was like, one of two things is going to happen. Either he is going to go full on state's evidence and spill on everybody. He's going to go Sammy the Bull Gravano, who's in Uber Supermax prison. Like, that's the only way that he can not be killed or suicided, is to be in Supermax as a federal witness. Like, as a federal witness, he's in that kind of protection. And it's either that or he's going to get suicided in a jail cell. One of the two.
I have a feeling they're going to put him in isolation.
Yeah.
To keep him away from danger. However, exactly. But I have a feeling that we're going to hear the news that he committed suicide. Yeah. And I bet you anything that suicide will be staged.
The minute that you hear, folks, and I'm here to tell you, I'm just going to call it, the second that you hear that he has been put on suicide watch, that he has entered a state of depression, that he doesn't know what to do, the rest of his life is over with these fraudulent charges, and he's put on suicide watch, watch out. That's when it happens. And
absolutely,
it's build the narrative.
It's exactly like you're saying. These judges, police departments, everybody is involved.
You know, I got to say that when, talking about that and that we all are on the same page, how messed up is it that we actually think that's possible? And the fact that it's happened over and over, it's been exposed. It's like there's no doubt in my mind that could be done. And then what they do is they manufacture the consent so that everybody believes that's what happened, and they'll pound it in everybody's head. And we'll never know because they'll just say the same thing. My wife is probably the most personally pessimistic person I know. And what I mean by that, let me quantify that, Amy. What I mean by that is she trusts no one. All right. That's actually, in a way, it's a really good place to start.
She is a pessimist when she meets anybody. Just like, and she blames it on her Boston upbringing. She's like, I don't trust none of them. I don't trust anybody.
So instead of starting at 100% trust, she starts at 0.
She starts at none. You got to earn it. You got to earn every bit of it with her. She sees this stuff and she's like, my God, how can this just keep happening? She's like, I don't understand how these people get a second shot. I don't understand how the charges disappear the first time. Go ahead.
Yep. I can definitely explain that.
Go ahead.
When I was trafficked, during the time that I was trafficked, what the traffickers would do, just in case if we ever got busted, they would actually get, and people don't realize this, please check death certificates of your family member. Do not have your social security number on there. It is public record.
That's right.
And what traffickers will do,
can you do me a favor and really simplify what you just said so that anybody of any age would understand that as best you can?
On a death certificate, please make sure your family's social security number is not displayed on the death certificate.
So, for instance,
you can actually leave that out.
So, if your father dies, your social security number is not on there. So it's someone that
his social
security number.
Oh, I see the point.
Because you're giving them every bit of identity at that point. Right. Because hey, what's the harm? He's dead, right?
Exactly.
Why would that number ever get on that thing? Is that just a default setting?
There.
Oh, so what do you got to do?
It's a field on the form to fill out.
How do you make that go away or not happen?
Yep. You do know that you never have to give your social security number to anyone, right? Even whenever you go in to get a job, you can be like, sorry, I don't think I need to give you that.
I thought I was buying
that is utterly
I was buying
optional.
a sandwich yesterday.
That is
I had to give it up.
that is utterly optional.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
But let me tell you this. So what vital statistic, remember I was talking about that spiral notebook and the names that my trafficker had? So what he would do is he would contact someone through vital statistics. He would say, give me all the social security number. So it comes through the death certificate that belonged to Jane or John Doe. So what they would do is they would find all the stacks of dead people, even children. Then they would contact someone they knew in Social Security Department that was taking money under the table. And they'll say, we need you to research this Social Security number, and we need you to find a way to wipe it out. We're not talking about Social Security that works in these different branches. We're talking about Social Security, the headquarters.
Everything you're talking about is the stuff that my friends just cannot believe happens. In fact, they openly disbelieve it.
It's literally the plot of movies.
Yeah, and in movies people can't believe.
Yeah. Yeah, these movies come from places.
People think I'm crazy.
Exactly. That's why, I always tell people, even though it sounds like a movie, but you have to wonder, where did it come from? Because they always say truth is stranger than fiction. It is so true. Because because people always say, because I always tell people, do you really think we're free? The moment we're born, we're attached to a Social Security number.
That's right.
Oh,
Guess what? That means we're being watched.
Oh, we're being
That
owned.
means we are being stalked.
We're just cattle.
Does that make sense?
My son's DNA was in a database before he was ever born.
Yep.
Yeah, they draw that stuff immediately, don't they?
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you'll get like these junk mail that says, hey, by the way, you get to donate this much. Well, a lot of people think junk mail is junk mail, but it also leads to human trafficking, and people don't realize that.
Can you explain that a little bit?
Because it's very much the process of normalization, and much like you have been normalized to just hand out 9 digits to somebody. Yeah. Oh, you need my social? All right.
Exactly.
So
let me give you an example about the junk mail.
Explain how the normalization happens within that horrible realm.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fascinated by the concept of junk mail being a problem. That is absolutely.
No!
It's like everything is bad.
Burn it, folks.
You know what I'm saying?
If you got a gas grill, collect it all every week and just burn it. Go ahead.
Exactly.
Go ahead. Explain how junk mail is a horrible thing.
It's actually kind of like a lottery system. So what they do is they send you a bunch of junk mail. They want to see what you will keep, what you'll throw away. So let's say they send you a sample. Your wife, Amy, let's say they send her a sample of a lotion. Well, she has to, once they realize that she kept it, because they're going to have her send in something through the app or something through the computer. Once she sends that, or let's say an advertisement, say, hey, you get this free lotion. All you have to do is pay shipping and handling. Well, she gets her credit card out. She's like, hey, I get to have this concealer that I typically spend $49.95, but I can only pay $3 just for shipping and handling. I put in my credit card number. Guess what? I just identity theft you without you knowing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's
I believe
the
all
compass
that, but when you hear somebody, I'm sorry,
junk
please
mail.
Excuse me. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. So once I get her credit card number, then I can hack into her bank because she already gave me the credit card number. Do you know the first 4 digits of our credit card will actually direct us to our bank? So let's say, I found out the first 4 digits, she's with Chase. So then that breaks down my hacking. Then I go into the Chase. I just got, I find someone else to pretend like I'm Amy. I'll gather more information to where all I have to do is call customer service. Hi, my name is Amy. And they'll say, you know what? What's the passcode? And I'll say, you know what? I forgot to write it down.
Yeah.
And they'll say, okay, out of 3 options, pick A, B, or C. Yeah. Did you used to live on Mallard Drive? Did you used to live on Glover Street? Yep. Did you used to? Well, I have 1 1/3 chance to make something right. So I'll say Glover. Yep.
Yeah.
They'll be like, that's correct.
Man.
And then guess what? I'm in her
Amen.
account. I can transfer anything that I want. I always tell people, when you check out with your credit card, never put your PIN when you're sliding your card with a chip reader. I don't care what the government tells you. You never put that PIN number. You always ask, can I pay in credit card? Because when you give that PIN number, that's the same PIN number that you use to access your account to get out of the ATM.
Yeah.
There is a computer that is built in to these
Can't do
little
anything.
things.
Just can't do anything.
Exactly. You
Yeah.
might as well just be a happy homeless person and pay everything through
God.
cash.
Yeah,
Oh, they're gonna get rid
Yep.
of cash.
eventually.
Yep.
Oh no, they want to get rid of it.
And you know why, right?
Of course,
It's a
they
great way
wanna-
to control you.
They'll have two things. They'll have an identification and recognition of everywhere you've been, everywhere you've spent money, what you spend
Yep.
money on, and they can correlate it to
Yep.
the exact person.
Oh.
And that's a mess.
Yep.
Anyway, we don't need to go
Absolutely.
there.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah. So
Yeah.
back
So,
on target.
you know, so when I started learning about identity theft, from that point on, they would take the social security number, then they would take it to a guy who can create an ID, a state valid ID, because we have a social security number that we're using
This stuff
to
is
make it
so-
look like a validated birth certificate that they created for us, along with a social security card with a fake name. So if I had that ID on me while I was being trafficked, and let's say the SWAT team did come and they busted everybody, well, guess what? If the cop grabs me and notice that I'm 19, but he runs my ID, that ID will ping to the trafficker. And the trafficker will contact every state representative, every other FBI that he has on that list that was involved in kiddie porn, and say, I need you to get her out. I need you to make sure they don't do a fingerprint on her.
So
They
it,
say,
sound-
don't worry about it.
it sounds to me that, as you were discussing earlier, that so
Mm-hmm.
many people that are being trafficked never even get caught or prosecuted. And that's the thing
Nope.
that drives me up a wall, because people look at the numbers of prosecutions and arrests and everything, and they're like,
Yeah.
this isn't a problem. But we're talking about they get rid of it at the source.
Yeah, we're finally
Yes.
starting to get some.
Yes.
What was it, Navixon?
Yes.
The cult, the sex cult.
Yep.
That guy
Yes.
just went down. We're getting ready to hopefully have Rick Allen Ross from the actual cult center to come on and
Yep.
talk about him and Charles Manson, all kinds of stuff. So we've started
Yep.
to see some prosecutions come through, and thank God.
Yeah.
Like I've told you before, keep track of the FBI. That is one of the news feeds that I follow and post from regularly.
Right.
If you go to FBI.gov and follow their news
Yep.
feed, you'll see things popping up pretty regularly, like frighteningly regularly. Easily
Yep.
once a week, once every other week.
Yeah, have a
new
Google
news
alert
coming
running
out.
on that, and it's just like you're just overwhelmed every day.
Yeah. It's,
Absolutely.
and I mean,
Absolutely.
I post at least a good probably 3 or 4 stories a month on the Dudes and Beer timeline on Facebook. That's like daily news blitz. If you're a news hound,
Absolutely.
and most of that, honestly, folks, is so that I do not lose articles that we're wanting to talk about on this show. You know, like
Absolutely.
I use them to the people that are responding to articles. I try to find guests about that. Obviously, my audience wants to hear it. That's the conversation that they're engaging. And people have left and right from both sides of the aisle been coming out about this Epstein case going on. And actually, in the promotional post as well as the episode post, I went and downloaded the entire sealed indictment that just came out today, available to everybody out there.
He even printed it out.
14 pages it is. Pretty much just reiterating on every page, yeah, he liked 14-year-olds and sexually trafficked them to numerous locations around the country.
Trafficked and smuggled.
Regularly.
And
it's,
kidnapped, actually,
it's
too.
frightening. Horrible stuff. Not just that,
Oh,
but
it's very cool.
had 14-year-olds recruiting their friends.
Forced to, really, to
You know?
survive.
Oh, absolutely.
And
absolutely.
Explain a little bit for our audience, because I mean, we heard about the grooming process for you, and
God,
how
I mean, that's just so. I mean, reasonable to expect somebody at that age, to react to that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely,
yes.
And there's a reason why they target those ages, specifically. Yep. So, explain a little bit about that friend recruiting process, though, the one that's a little bit different than the romantic, quote, I guess, more pimp recruiting process. That's very, very similar to how pimps normally bring people into the fold, is to treat them as their girlfriend and then eventually turn them out. But with what Epstein was using and the methods that he was using to have 14-year-olds bringing their friends into the fold, stuff like that, explain how that
a lot of
works.
it has to do with brainwashing.
Okay.
Because remember when I said when I was 9 and pedophiles stopped touching me and stopped looking at me, I was wanting attention.
Yep.
That is the same way with a lot of sex trafficking victims. They miss that attention. So in order for, it's kind of like in a very distorted and twisted way of thinking, but these girls look at these pedophiles and these pimps and traffickers like daddy warbucks.
Yeah.
Like, daddy, look at me. Daddy, look at me. You want me to bring you a girl so you can be proud of me? Mm-hmm. So what they do, a lot of times these girls will go out. Yep. So, for example, exactly. So, for example, when I was a madam, I'll give you an example. When I was a madam and I was taught how to hunt, my trafficker actually taught me how to hunt. So that's why I utilized the same thing to teach parents what to look for. I had a mom that said to me, I need you to teach me how they're going to groom my kid. And I said, no, I need to teach you how they groom you first. Because a lot of these predators, they want to see what your family dynamic is first.
Yeah.
So let's say I am 14 years old and I go to a junior high school and I'm not a student there. I'll just hang out. I'll take a look because my trafficker has taught me just to keep watch. And when I see a group of kids coming out, I'm going to look for that one that's always coming out by herself. She's the one that gets picked on. She's the one that nobody likes.
Yeah.
Then I'll walk up to her and be her friend. Hi, what do you want? Well, I want to hang out with you. Okay, if you want to, but we'll start to build a rapport. Then she's going to let me into her home. I meet her mom. Her mom smiles at me. Oh, are you a new friend? But then I start seeing the deeper cut. Her dad's an alcoholic. Her dad beats her mom. Her mom, is a victim of this vicious cycle of domestic violence. But the mom is afraid to call the police. Well, guess what? Now I got the perfect victim.
Yeah.
God almighty.
Yeah, they're already normalized not to call the police.
Yep. And on top of that, the girl has already had a low self-esteem.
Yeah.
So what can I do to lift her up? So I'll buy her an expensive gift. Mm-hmm. We've only known each other within a day. But guess what? She's always wanted an iPad. I get her an iPad. She's always wanted to have an iPhone, the iPhone XSM, or whatever it's called.
Yeah, exactly.
So I get her that cell phone. And, then I see how the mom reacts. And the mom will say, oh, thank you for being so nice to my daughter. There are some parents that actually love that you shower their kids with gifts.
Oh, yeah.
And that's a huge red flag right there.
Yeah.
Now, if I was an adult woman recruiting a young teenage girl, then I would then pamper the parents, not the kid. So let's say you have a 13-year-old daughter, all right? I'm a grown woman, and I were to bring your daughter because she was lost. But I would tell you, oh, Chris, I just realized, this is your daughter. My name is Chong. You don't know me, but I saw your daughter walking home. It was raining. I hope you didn't mind. What would be your first response?
Yeah,
it's storming outside. Huh?
Sorry, I'm a little overcautious. My answer would be no, thank you. But
Yeah.
I mean, I'm pretty sure in the moment I'd probably be totally opening.
Yeah, that would be most people. Oh my God! Thank God somebody was nice enough to help my kid out and
I'm
drive
just
him home.
Today, I'm way too
Concerned
cautious.
parent.
But back
Concerned
then,
parent.
I would have invited him in and had dinner with him.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then once we had dinner, I would take a look around. And then I would, if you're, so let's say, just like you said, your wife, Amy, is very pessimist. So let's say she tells you there's something about her I don't like.
Oh my
So
gosh.
I'm going to have to work harder to prove her wrong.
Oh my gosh.
So then, I will pretend. So what you don't know is that I will actually go on Facebook. I will actually stalk you on Facebook without you knowing.
Sure.
Of course.
Then I'll find out the next event, the public event that your daughter's having. I'm going to act like we bumped into each other again. What do you know? Oh my gosh, your daughter goes to this school? So does my daughter, even though I don't have a daughter.
Whoa.
I could just pick any Asian kid and go, yeah, that's my daughter right there.
Yeah.
Wow.
Even though my kids are actually both Caucasian, because I had a blonde-haired baby, and everyone was looking at me saying, "Is that your son?" And I was like, "Yes, he's my son."
Yeah.
Wow.
But that's how they do that. And then you would think, "Oh, we ran into each other. What a coincidence!"
Yeah.
And then I stand with you. We're at this event together. We're talking. I'm still being nice to Amy, but then you start seeing that Amy is shrugging her shoulders. In your mind, you're thinking, why are you rude? She's being nice. She's being nothing but nice. You don't see any red flags.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Every
starting
bit
to
of that-
build that doubt.
Every bit of that sounds human. Like you would.
Exactly.
Everybody could fall for that.
Yes.
Yeah.
But here's the one thing. The one thing is, it's the intent.
Yeah.
That's the scary part, because a lot of times we don't know what that intent is until it's too late.
Yeah.
But here's what I can share with people. When someone is running into you multiple times, then start looking them up on Facebook. See where they live.
Yeah.
If you start stalking your stalker, you'll start finding some things you did not want to know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
You start finding things you did not want to know. But this is what happens. This is how predators get to your kids. That's how teachers do it. That's how church members do it. That's how, local communities do it. And before you know it, so let's say your wife goes out of town, it's just you and your daughter, and your daughter says, "Hey, I'm going to a slumber party." Well, and then, you're posting on Facebook saying, "Hey, I need someone to help me with my daughter's slumber party." Well, guess what? That's public information. Guess what? I found out was your daughter's having a slumber party. So by the time you drop your daughter off, I'm going to be there to make sure she goes home with me.
I have a relevant to this, age, so to speak, question. When you and I were kids, I know there were different ways to, find victims, but between then and now, what would you rate the, the ease of which you can, find somebody or work them versus back then? Do you understand what I'm saying?
I think they're both the same. Yes, I think they're both the same, but the shift has geared from one with word of mouth, whereas now everything is online. Yeah. Everything is accessible. Everything is instant. Because that's why I always tell parents, please do not post your children's picture as your profile or cover picture.
What is it?
If you have a private
it's like
account,
85% of kids, and probably above that, have an internet presence by age 1.
Yeah,
if not sooner.
Yeah, and we talked about it frequently with Arshawn McCleskey, former Secret Service fraud investigator. And my wife and I have discussed it. I do not mention my son's name
Yep.
on
Neither do
social
I.
media. I'll post pictures of my son, things like that. We've definitely had the discussion of possibly moving things to a private family page, not publicly posting pictures anymore. But you have to remember, folks, like we have to remember it is a digital day and age. It is a biometric day and age.
Yep.
And you are by default revoking your child's consent utterly.
Yep.
That biometric data, the pupillary distance between their pupils will never change. It will be the same.
Pretty much
the bone structure will be the same unless they have major facial reconstructive surgery. And even most AI compatible facial recognitions can get past that.
Okay, so here's my question. You had mentioned making it having the difference between open and, like familial thing where it's like, a closed group with the family.
Yeah.
It seems to me that the ratio of this occurring is pretty much the same inside of a family as it is out in the quote real
absolutely.
world.
Sure.
So let me just ask this. I mean,
it's not removing that danger. I'm just talking about
right?
removing that consent from my child.
That's a very good point.
Putting that out there, putting that online.
Yeah, you'd visit them or see
putting
them.
It out there for any dude in Detroit that I'm a rando friend with to see.
Yep.
It
makes perfect sense.
Nothing against folks in Detroit. It's just that one guy.
Exactly.
You know him.
Yeah, you do know him. Unfortunately, you may know them. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
Oh, no, exactly.
That's what's so messed up about this.
And that's why I say it's the hidden crime in America, the one that we are just scratching. Like Epstein is just the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah, when it comes to high-end stuff, that is just because he's way up at the top, that doesn't mean he's down at the sheriff level or the judge level.
Yeah.
Or even the dog catcher level, for crying out loud. It's everywhere.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's just it. It is prevalent. It's all over the place. And
so what do you think is going to happen to Jerreferey? I mean, is he going to?
What do I think?
Yeah, I mean, because obviously this is something that you understand the whole up and down of this, the width and breadth of the people that are involved with it. So it's not probably a surprise to you that there is
it's not a surprise.
Laundry list, right? The accounting books.
Oh, absolutely.
So it's like
that's why I think he'll be dead.
You think he's going to wind up in a cell, straight up dead? What's going to happen with the case? I mean, surely that evidence is going to come out. No.
They never found JFK's brain, bro.
That's true.
Exactly.
or his actual
Robert Kennedy died trying to find his brother's brain, and it was put in as forensic evidence at Bethesda. So, like those things just disappear, dude. Once it goes behind a closed door, it's just like going into prison. What happens to you there may not ever see the light of day.
I just want to make sure that, the people that know and understand this are, actually saying this out loud because, again, I have significant number of people that just think that I am way out there.
Same here.
It is just not true.
How many people think that you're
unbelievable?
How many people think that you're way out there, Chong?
Oh, I've been institutionalized.
Yeah.
So
when I first shared about my story, this was like in the early 2000s. I remember a psychiatrist told me that I was nothing but a whore and I need to get over it.
I love it. Wow.
And he institutionalized me. And I said, no, I didn't choose this. He said, yes, it's a choice. And he would tell me to say it out loud so I could eventually convince myself.
Now, that is some extremist behavior.
Yeah.
I mean, that is
absolutely.
And that, to me, reeks of different sects of certain religions, in my opinion.
And
well, I believed that he probably knew about it and didn't want me to speak on it.
Oh, you know what? That's I have a tiny story, which is one of the last survivors that I actually had a long conversation with. She was telling me that she reported her stuff in her hometown, and it went up to I believe it was the chief of police, and he said, I am not going to move this forward. We are going to get rid of it. And she was like, why? And he said, because I have a family.
Yep.
And it's one of those things where when I try to explain that to people, they think I'm exaggerating or just being fanciful, and I'm like, dude, This is everywhere. I have
Yeah.
a tiny story also
Yep.
that I'll mention. When I just spoke to a big, let's say, software licensee or licensor, and spoke to her for quite some time about what we were doing, and when she started, giving an introduction to her of herself, first thing out of her mouth was, "My sister was trafficked," and it's like, it happens everywhere, and it drives me absolutely insane. I mean, I'll let you talk for a while because, oh my gosh, I feel.
Go ahead, Kim.
Well, what I was going to say is the other part is, I mean, I've had people say, no, this is too far-fetched, it can't happen. And there are moments I kept thinking, is something wrong with me? Am I not normal? And, when I first started speaking out about human trafficking, nobody believed me. Everyone accused me of lying, that I just wanted attention. And I was like,
Sure.
You guys have some messed up ways of thinking about getting attention.
Yeah.
And then in 2003, when I heard human trafficking, I was like, wait a minute, that's what happened to me. And that's
what
when
I'm
I started
talking about.
speaking out, but the one thing I do want to clarify, because so many people get this mixed up, I will say this much. Traffickers, big organized traffickers, do not ever associate with street pimps.
No.
And so when people tell me, these are pimps that are trafficking, yes, pimps can traffic, but I don't see pimps as the big gung-ho trafficker. When I think of traffickers, I think of legislatively corrupted officials, international businesses, and CEOs and banks. That's when I think of traffickers.
Well-
that can basically be the one to be the puppet master to the military, the media, and the financial institution.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, no.
Yep.
Anybody remember the D.C. madam that ended up dead?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Who was getting ready to come out about a general that she'd been
Yep.
with
And that's
for years?
just one person that she was going to name.
Yeah,
Yep.
that was just one.
Yep.
And that's what happens.
Yep.
And what's
Yep.
interesting, the one thing that I've held, and I'm pretty much a political agnostic. I don't really
Yes,
toe a party
me too.
line. I don't
Me
vote a
too.
party.
Same here. There's no point.
And when the last election happened, the one thing that popped up on my radar more than anything else was Pizzagate.
Yes.
And it wasn't so much, what was in there? Like people were saying, like we're saying about this, like people have said about your experience and the stories that
Yep.
you've told, Billy. It's too much. It's too much. It's
Yep.
too rich.
Yep.
It is
There
quite
was
literally unbelievable.
There was kerfuffle all over the news.
Yep.
There was kerfuffle in debates all over the place about where the information came from, how the information came out, how it was leaked, who it was leaked to. Nobody ever denied what was actually in the emails.
Amen.
Ever. Nobody in the DNC was ever like, these things are horrible and they are
never-
not true.
Never called them
Never
fakes or
once.
anything. Nobody on the news.
Nope.
Nobody.
Nope. And that
Yet it
to
didn't
me,
matter.
that's the one that like you said earlier, red flags. That was like
Yep.
pardon my language, it was like a fucking flare in the sky.
Do you think?
Oh, absolutely.
It was like, that is what we should all be focusing on.
Yeah.
Yep.
Forget any hacks, forget anything else. It's the fact that
Yep.
that happened. And
that
yeah,
and our entire
there
voting
was a
system.
local radio host that put some things out there that did a bunch of stuff. Everything else, it made a guy go out there to a pizza place with a gun, all kinds of stuff. But yet still, nobody ever denied what was in the emails.
Nope.
And what was in the emails was exactly stuff like this.
Yep.
Exactly stuff like Jerreferey Epstein, if I'm not mistaken, mentioned by name in those
Yep.
emails. As well as, a
few
person
other
who
people.
was running for president at the time.
There's
Yep.
a line in there where Hillary wrote a letter to Ms. Rothschild, Yeah. Telling her that she'd do basically whatever to, make it up to her for losing the election.
Well, and
what the heck is that?
What's even more mind-boggling, folks, is when you go back and you think about Jimmy Savile. He was, for years, people were like, oh, these people are conspiracy theorists. They think he's involved in a child pedophile ring, dealing children to, people of fame, in music and movies, even to the royal family. Oh, this is horse hockey. No way, Jimmy Savile. He's the gentleman of the entertainment industry until he died. Yeah. And then it came out that these things were true. Now they've still said not the royal family, but everything else. And we know well, we do. I mean, I'm sorry. There's no way.
No, that's fine.
If there are cardinals involved, why not the royal family?
Exactly.
That's how I look at it. Nobody is above reproach. I'm sorry.
The entire Catholic Church that's just decided that it's totally okay to do that. And you're like, what happens to these people? Nothing. I mean, it's. I mean, I can't even.
And that's what I love is that after a life of horrors that you lived, Chong, you still devoted yourself to becoming an activist with the Velvet Brick podcast, with hashtag every 40 seconds. Explain to our audience what those campaigns are about, what the show is about, why you started the show, and what the hashtag every 40 seconds campaign is all about, so that they can go out there and become part of it, start sharing things, everything else.
Well, one of the things I started realizing is that there is a stat by the FBI and the Missing and Exploited Children, as well as the National Crime Center, and that's every 40 seconds, a child goes missing in America. That means that's an equivalent of 2,100 children missing per day. On top of that, last year they were reported 424,066 children that went missing in America. Now, one of the other things that people don't know about is that in the Asian community, they don't report their kids missing. They see that as a cultural, as a cultural taboo.
Yeah, it's a point of dishonor to the family.
Yes.
Yeah,
and then there's also a mixed justice when it comes to Native American kids, because there's a lot of Aboriginal children that fall into foster care that shouldn't have never been there, because they should have been under the tribal law, the Indian tribal law, not under our United States, foster care. There's also been issues where even CPS have been involved in child trafficking, where they start selling kids in their foster care system.
Well, then
and so
Native
when
Americans
I look at,
have it, I mean, no one wants to acknowledge it, and they are begging for people to acknowledge it.
Yeah,
exactly.
I know I interrupted you, but sorry about that.
No, that's fine. And so when I've been doing public speaking for 15 years, I got flooded with mail to email to post. I had mothers and fathers writing to me, my daughter's missing, my son is missing, no one will listen to me. I'll give you an example. There was a mom who is Latino, and her son went missing, but they're both fourth generation Latinos in America. They lived in Texas. They were born and raised in Texas. But when the mother went to the local police department and said, my son is missing, the cops didn't take it seriously. They don't see it as a criminal factor. They see it as a civil problem. They don't want to deal with it. Well, her son was 6 years old. When they found him, they found his body in Laredo, Texas, from Fort Worth. And when they found his body, he was cut up. They found out that he was used as a child drug mule. Yeah. And on top of that, they also sold his organs.
Yeah.
Now, not to sound ignorant or anything, had this been a little girl named Susie with beautiful blonde hair, blue eyes that were controlled by the major media, and if it was a minority that did the abduction, oh my gosh, it would be front page news.
We'd have
We need to
Amber
punish
Alerts
them.
on our phones nationwide.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, and I'm not ignoring that
Yeah.
Caucasian kids, are not, important, because there's even kids that are in poverty that are Caucasian.
Yeah.
The wayward kids, the left, they're not even included.
Yeah, I think we're just talking about a general trend as far as the length of time somebody's going to be in the spotlight, so to speak.
Yeah.
Exactly.
There's no comparison.
Exactly. And so what I wanted to do is I felt like I was watching Law and Order, I was watching NCIS, I was watching Criminal Minds. I mean, I'm a huge crime fan. But then I started thinking, wait a minute, nobody is doing a scripted show about human trafficking. And no one is showing a story-like episode to show how this can be done.
Yep.
Because I'm a visual learner. If someone gave me a verbatim, I'll be like, huh? So if you show me, then I'll be like, oh, gotcha, And so I thought to myself, and then plus on top of that, a lot of my friends are doing amazing outreach work. You got like these big time nonprofits that are making money back to back, but then you got these amazing nonprofits that are struggling to get funding and they can't. Yeah. And so I decided to kill two birds with one stone. And I thought, you know what? I want to create a scripted series called Every 40 Seconds, so that we are reminded that every 40 seconds our children are being missing and that we're not doing anything about it. If I can put public pressure to where we can start changing laws, effectively changing laws, to where we will start touring between the seasons, well, I have written up to 80 episodes. Wow. And all the episodes I've written are inspired by real FBI cases. I've had people say, you need to do a docuseries. I'm sorry, but I don't want to get shot. Do you? Because if we're going to blow the whistle on all these corrupted officials, then we have to do it in an inspired fictional story. Because then they won't know what part we're talking about, and if it's pointed at them. And it keeps us safe.
I did. I pulled out my little calculator, and if you think about every 40 seconds, we've been on for an hour and a half, essentially, and the number I came up with is 144 losses.
Yep.
Yeah.
We just lost 144 kids while we were talking.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And people don't realize the impact of that, and so. With the TV series, because I'm going to put 10 episodes per season. So the podcast is actually separate. The podcast is not with the Every 40 Seconds, but I'm utilizing the podcast to raise the momentum, the awareness, and things like that. But the Every 40 Seconds series, so it's actually about a female survivor that teaches the FBI how to think like a trafficker, because I've actually done undercover cases. I've done consulting with both FBI as well as private attorneys that's taking pro bono cases of human trafficking. I've done all types. The only type of cases I didn't work on were street pimp case, because I never had a pimp. I never had to walk the streets. I don't know that life. Yeah. But I do know about political corruption. I do know about organized crime, and I do know about these Asian massage parlors.
That is a phenomenal idea and execution.
Thank you. Yeah. And so my hope is that through the series, 20% will be given back to nonprofit, not just a one-time check. I'm talking about every time our episodes hit that 20%, that every time we engross the sales from watching or whatever they do it with ranks or ratings, that 20% goes directly to grassroots, minority-led, veterans, and also second chance felons.
That's fantastic.
That's what we want to help. And then on top of that, we're going to take the cast and the crew along with activists and advocates to tour all over the world, not just the United States, but all over the world, including military bases. So we can start strengthening the cases. We can start penalizing bad judges. We need to start holding accountable with our judicial system that are corrupted, because anytime a judge makes a bad decision, he gets a slap on the wrist also. Yeah. No more. I'm sick and tired of this. You know, and then on top of that,
I am so proud of you.
Yeah, I mean, we
that.
finally got
Gosh.
conviction for the judge in Pennsylvania that was selling kids up the river into basic slavery. You know, like it happens all the time,
dude. Our entire prison system is essentially.
Oh,
just
that's
trafficking.
an episode in and of itself.
That's true. I mean,
absolutely.
It's just another version of slavery.
So, tell everybody where they can go to find the podcast, where they can go to support the hashtag Every 42nd campaign.
They can go to my website. It's www.iamchongkim.com. We are raising funds. Our initial goal is $35,000 because we still have to fly out to LA and everything. And right now I'm still living on disability. I've been writing 80 episodes. I've been, doing all this stuff, but all of this also comes with expenses.
Yeah.
Attorneys need to get paid. We need to get the marketing packet together. And so all of that adds up to $35,000. Now we are on the verge of talking to 3 possible major film studios and agencies that are really interested. And the downfall is we need to, hire an attorney to look over the contracts and everything, and that costs money. Yeah. And so the GoFundMe is also on our website. If you click on our GoFundMe on our website, and then let me tell you about the Every 42nd video challenge. And I've been asking people to do this, and I don't think anyone really understood it. So do you remember the ice bucket challenge?
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that became popular. And kids can do this as well. So what I'm challenging everyone to do is called the Every 42nd video challenge. So you challenge a friend to either donate, and we're going to start with just $40. If they donate more, great. But the minimum is you have to only donate a minimum of $40 or more, or you show us how to, eat 40 popcorn or do 40 push-ups or 40 jumping jacks or even just 40 seconds of just singing something. So that's the challenge. And so you tell a friend, so let's say I said, hi, my name is Chong Kim. I'm going to do 40 jumping jacks. And after I do 40 jumping jacks, then I'm going to say, the reason why I did 40 jumping jacks is because I'm standing against human trafficking. Do you know that every 40 seconds a child goes missing in America? And that 1 in every 6 child falls into human trafficking. Won't you stand with me? So now I'm going to challenge Chris to either donate a minimum of $40 or he has to eat 40 cookies. And you have to show that you ate 40 cookies.
Oh, that's no challenge. That's an afternoon.
I like it.
Exactly. But does that make
you weren't
sense?
here between like 2 and 2:15 today.
Oh, I love it. There's a website that I participated in one time. They are a world's record site, so they track any world's record.
Oh,
so you might consider, or everyone should just check out recordsetter.com because they have insane records. And I'm telling you, if you could tie in with those guys, that might be really fun. So you like see who could do the most X, Y, or Z, or how many 40s that you get. The number would be, the record would be something like the number of activities you made people do for your GoFundMe or whatever the case is.
Absolutely.
It would be,
absolutely.
I'm going to make a video of me eating 40 cookies.
Okay.
And post it. Done. I mean, you openly challenged me. You didn't say
sure.
There was no for instance
I'm
in that
sure we
sentence
just had it laid down
when you said I challenged Chris. There wasn't no for instance there. You actively challenged me,
see
Chong.
How many people
so
you can get to
Absolutely.
hashtag dudes and beer.
There's no
for it.
choice. There you go.
Make them all hashtag it, and then you can count it up and see if you get more than me.
Yeah. Oh.
Exactly.
All right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And what I'm going to do is, and I tell everyone, when you do the challenge, please do a hashtag every 40 seconds campaign.
There you go.
Please do not forget the word campaign, because there is another every 40 seconds, but it ties into suicide, so we don't want to get mixed up with them.
Oh, no.
Goodness.
And so what I'm going to do is take
every
all
40
the videos.
That is so messed up.
Can we just stop at 35
What?
seconds?
Yeah, what is going on here?
Come on.
How about
Exactly.
every million seconds? You know, like,
right.
let's
Exactly.
really extend that out a bit.
Yeah, yeah.
They're both at 40 seconds.
Yeah. Whew.
Oh,
Yep.
my
It's
God.
rough. It's rough.
But what my plan is with the videos, I'm hoping it'll go viral.
Yeah.
So that way I can show it to Ellen, I can show it to Steve Harvey, Terry Conway Jr.'s show, the Doctor show.
Yeah.
So that way we can really be on a major platform to talk about this issue. Because everybody wants to talk about this girl who licked ice cream.
No, that's
And we got more pressing
Yeah.
issues.
that is what
Yeah.
you call, Operation Mockingbird.
Yes.
They block
Yes.
the real information by showing you things that you can get mad about.
That was one of my favorite things that came up. We covered it on Dudes and Beer was the fact that the whole gold dress, blue dress
Oh, my God.
that happened a few
yes.
years ago was actively tested by the CIA done on Facebook. Oddly enough,
Wow.
they funded Facebook in their initial rounds of funding. Yeah. So,
I'm shocked.
Yep.
yeah, I'm not. So,
I know. I'm not shocked anymore.
and that's just it. We shouldn't be shocked about when we hear about things like Epstein being true. We shouldn't be shocked about this stuff at this point. But unfortunately, as a society, these things are just coming to light in front of our eyes. Finally, they've lived in the shadows for years. Your entire life, Chong. You're the same age as me. You said it earlier. You're 44.
Yep.
Yeah, like these things have been going on your whole life, and just now
Absolutely.
starting to hit the headlines. So,
Exactly.
once again, tell everybody the websites where they can go to find the Velvet Brick podcast, as well as the hashtag every 40 seconds campaign.
Yes. They can go to my website, www.iamchongkim.com. All the information is there. You'll see a button that says podcast. It'll direct you to my Facebook. And this coming Thursday, I'm going to be live with an actor named Nicholas Rice. And I'm also going to talk about my Las Vegas trip when a young girl told me that she wanted me to recruit her into filming, and how I told her about human trafficking. So that will be on my podcast this coming Thursday at 11 a.m. live.
All right. Fantastic. Chong, thank you so much for coming on, for sharing your harrowing story.
You're welcome.
Yes.
And for discussing this. I look forward to having you back on the show, not only to hear
Absolutely.
about updates, but much like whenever we have Billy on to talk about the state of human trafficking right now. This is really a cause that I love throwing the weight of my podcast behind.
Yes.
All we can do is make ripples, folks. That's all you can do is be the
Absolutely.
stone in the pond.
Yeah, and you can't think that you can solve the world's
No.
problem. What
No.
you can do is you can look in your general vicinity, learn more about this, and discuss it with people.
Well, and not just that, it's the fact of you can only change the world as far as you can run.
Yeah, think
So-
think globally
You're-
but act
you're-
locally. I mean,
yeah.
that's the only way
Yeah.
we can do this, because the problem is so big.
Within 12 feet. Within 12 feet, folks. And
Right.
that means if you can't stop human trafficking within 12 feet of you, you can at least have the conversation about human trafficking
Absolutely.
within 12 feet of
Absolutely.
you. It's not a comfortable conversation. That's what Dudes
No.
and Beer is about. Is
Hashtag
the
12 feet
uncomfortable
from you.
conversation. Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's so important. I can't express it enough. Thank you so much for coming on once again, sharing your story.
You're welcome.
Please do hold the line for just a moment as we close things
Absolutely.
out, Chong. Billy, tell everybody where they can go to find out about the great work of the Radical Empathy Education Foundation.
You can go to REEF, which is reefcares.com or .org, excuse me.
Yes.
So reefcares.org. And we're also our Twitter or Instagram is all at reefcares.
Yeah.
So if you can remember that, you'll find us.
That's right. Hashtag Reef Cares. Don't forget that. While you're online checking out the great work of the Radical Empathy Education Foundation, as well as Chong Kim. Make sure to check out the Dudes and Beer podcast, dudesandbeer.com. You can go to the Knowledge Vault, actually. If you go to the Knowledge Vault and go to constitutional and civil rights, at the bottom of that page is hyperlinked the entire Jeffrey Epstein indictment. You can download the entire PDF, read it for yourself. It's also hyperlinked inside this episode post. So if you go to the post on dudesandbeer.com and just click the words recent arrest, and that will be the entire PDF there in our Knowledge Vault. And you can read all the 14 pages of sick goodness that Jeffrey Epstein was into. So once again, thank you always for tuning into the show. While you're online checking us out, please do make sure to go by and check out the other great work by our parent network, HC Universal. HCUniversalNetwork.com is where you can check it out. Don't forget about Audible. audibletrial.com/dudes is where you can get your free 30 days. Until next time, everybody, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and remember, if you can't be good at it. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Dudes and Beer podcast. To listen to our audio streams or chat with us live, download the official Dudes and Beer app for Android and iDevices, available on Google Play and iTunes markets. For more episodes, content, and information, visit us online at dudesandbeer.com. You can also find our episodes on Breach.tv, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, SoundCloud, iTunes, YouTube, Stitcher, or your favorite podcast service. Dudes and Beer is a proud member of the HC Universal Network family of podcasts. For more about our sponsors and other podcasts on this network, visit hcuniversalnetwork.com. Thanks for listening, everybody, and until next time, drink responsibly.